Okay, that concludes the administration presentation of actually the audit together with that budget presentation gives you kind of a full financial outlook of where we are right now. So, Mr. Martino, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Otto. Is there any board discussion of what you just heard?
Yeah, I did notice during the audit they mentioned about the fund balance and how we did not spend what was shown during the budget presentation. Maybe that was because we're comparing budgets to budgets, but I think it's important that we compare moving forward what we actually spent to what we intend to budget next year, what we did budget. Is there any feedback on that? Was I just misunderstanding that, or because they were two different things?
I don't. Maybe Kim, you can help with that. Connor, do you want to rephrase your question?
Sure. I believe during the audit we showed that we did not spend as much fund balance as we budgeted. However, during the budget presentation, it looked like we spent quite a bit, or we budgeted to spend quite a bit of fund balance.
Well, in the budget presentation, we talked about 2013-14. The audit is on 2012-13.
Okay.
So it's two different things. 2012-13, we ended up with $145,000 more in the fund balance, but in 2013, you budgeted about 2.2 or 2.4 to be spent. What we're telling you right now is that on our best estimates right now, you're going to spend about $1.8 million. We're hoping that number will improve.
Okay.
If I could interject to answer the second part of your question, if I understood your question, was we did take a look at prior years expenses. We put together a report for when we went through the budget line and took 11, 12, 13 actual expense and 13, 14 budget expense. And we compared it that way to see the trend and how things were being spent. So we did compare it to prior year's expense to see if our budget was actually in line with what was actually being spent.
Any other board discussion? Let's move on then to financial approvals. Is there a motion to approve the attached course and credit request?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Hamill?
Yes, only for A.
Only for 10A.
I'm sorry, any discussion on that motion?
Where is that document? Calendar, your document.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We'll do motion 10A through D.
I'll second. 10A through D.
I have a comment on that. Mr. Basil had suggested that we not accept the audit tonight because we just got it and we haven't had time to study it.
Okay, then I will amend my motion to 10A through C.
I will second that.
Any discussion on the motion to approve A through C?
Are we just going to put D back on for the next meetings that we'll
Yes, that'll give us time to study it and see if we have any questions about it.
I think just so the board understands, there's an obligation on the part of the district to submit what has been done so far to the state. Am I correct with that, Mr. Sugars?
There is a timeline for submission of the audit report to the state. That's the end of December 31st. However, it does not need to be approved by the board. It just needs, Mr. Board just needs to indicate when it was prepared and then submit it to the state by December 31st.
So Mr. Boyer can submit it. We'll vote on it at the next meeting. Okay, Mrs. Hamill?
Okay. So the motion is for 10A through C. Motion made by Mr. Kurtz, seconded by Mr. Dowski. Ms. Bites? I haven't seen it. Mrs. Duncan? Yes. Mrs. Duncan? Yes. Mrs. Dowski? Yes. Mrs. Bites? Yes. Mrs. Bites? Yes. Mrs. Duncan? 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 yes. Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Rathke?
Yes.
Ms. Twardowski? Yes. And Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passed.
I believe we need a motion to table item 10B.
That's correct.
I made that motion. Second.
Any discussion on the table? Seeing none, Mrs. Hamill?
Motion is to table 10D. First by Mr. Kurtz, seconded by Mr. McLaughlin. Mrs. Duncan? Yes. Mrs. Hamill, yes. Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Rathke?
Yes.
Ms. Twardowski? Yes. Mr. Basil? Mrs. Bites? Yes. And Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 11, personnel approvals.
Make a motion for personnel number 11 through 12, Bravo, as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion, Mrs. Hamill?
Motion is for 11 through
Oh, he's taking 11 and 12.
Are you taking 11 and 12?
Yes.
11 and 12 to 12B. A motion made by Mr. McLaughlin, seconded by Mr. Twardowski, as amended for 12B.
Any discussion?
Pardon me? Oh. Mrs. Hamill, yes. Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Rathke?
Yes.
Ms. Twardowski?
Are we now up to this?
Mr. Basil? Mrs. Bites?
Yeah, I don't know why you didn't do it.
Yes. Mrs. Duncan? Yeah. Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, under policy, a motion to approve the following policies. Any discussion? No discussion, Mrs. Hamill?
Motion by Mr. McLaughlin for 13A, seconded by Mr. Kurtz. Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Rathke?
Yes.
Ms. Twardowski? Yes. Mr. Basil? Mrs. Bites? Abstain. Mrs. Duncan? Yes. And Mrs. Hamill, yes. Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Is there anything under transportation? Seeing none, moving on to old business. There's a motion to approve the school board committees. There have been some changes to what I presented as school board committees. So before we have a motion to vote, Mr. McLaughlin is asked to continue chairing the negotiations committee. I agreed to make that change. Mrs. Duncan has asked to not chair the policy review committee, which leaves the question, is there anybody that would care to chair the policy review committee?
Mr. McLaughlin's pointing at me. I'd be happy to do a situation similar to curriculum and instruction. I could make a return, a reappearance, I guess, as chairman of policy review. Just if I'm not there in person, I'd have somebody to run the meeting, but I'd be happy to help facilitate. Even when I'm not, unless there's someone who wants to join the committee, would rather do it.
And is there anybody who would like to be on the policy review committee? Okay, so seeing none, that's the changes that I'm aware of. Mr. McLaughlin will chair the negotiations committee, and he's agreed to continue to also chair the transportation committee. Mr. Kurtz will chair the policy review committee. Is there a motion to approve these committees?
I do have a quick, I don't want to say objection, but For the ad hoc committees, I believe membership continues. And I don't know, do you need a formal resignation in order for there to be a vacancy? For example, policy review, I believe Mr. Basil and Mrs. Hamill are still technically on it because they do not repeat at the beginning of every year like the standing committees. So do we need a formal, do they wish to not continue? Does that need to be, that's my question, because there's really no vacancy right
Brian,
now.
I'll ask you to weigh in on that.
Resignation.
I'd have to refer to policy on that. Did the policy, I thought the policy indicated that committees would be reviewed on an annual basis.
Except, I believe, the
Ad hoc committees continue through the term of their office.
But I do believe all the members in question have agreed or asked to be removed from these committees. However, there's not been a formal
Or
announcement.
if they voluntarily resign from the committees, I don't think there's any board action required.
Okay, great.
Mr. Basil told me directly he does not want to be on policy anymore. Mrs. Hamill?
I wasn't put on there. I thought it was your choice, so I didn't question it.
Do you want to continue on policy?
Were you on last? I was on it last year, but no.
Okay, thank you. So those are the changes. Mr. McLaughlin would chair negotiations.
I think the other thing, I'm just double checking. I think I was on transportation, and since you don't have the fourth person, I think people like I'm just pulling up the committee list from the website right now. I mean, I'd be happy to continue to serve if. Yes, I was on transportation.
That's fine. You'd be the fourth. So, any other discussion items or changes?
I make a motion for 15 alpha, 15A, and B as amended with the discussions that we had in the proposed changes.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Hamill?
Motion made by Mr. McLaughlin was 15A, B as amended. Seconded by Mr. Kurtz. Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. Rathgeb.
Yes.
Mr. Dowski.
Yes.
Mr. Basil. Ms. Bites.
Yes.
Bites. Mrs. Dunn.
Yes.
Mrs. Hamill, yes. Mr. Kurtz.
Yes.
And Mr. Martino.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Is there any new business?
None from the administration.
Yeah, I actually do have something. I think the new sound system is working very well from what I heard sitting in, from what I heard when I was sitting in the audience. I don't know if anybody else agrees, but I think it was a whole lot easier here tonight than it was in the past. So I asked that we continue with this setup if possible. I think it was a great change.
Work in progress.
No other new business? Presentations by the public.
Steve Miller from Evansville. A couple of comments and questions on the budget presented. Obviously, the budget was passed as presented and devastated for the children in the community. So a couple of basic questions for you. As the loss of students, the impact by the budget itself, in the past, changes in programs and obviously the speaker programs, there's a number of additional students. Is that factored into consideration of the budget as well? I think probably with public education, I mentioned in school, but this continues, that they're going to go out of school, to join school. Certain other than making the same decisions. It's one of the best factors.
Mr. Miller, I'm sorry. I'm not hearing very well what you're saying.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll pay attention more. Just ask if the loss of children based on programs that are eliminated, that's factored into the analysis we're doing. I know we're losing people because of the program cuts, and we'll continue to lose more and eliminate all the activities in the program. So that was factored into the analysis as well.
If I understand your question, you're asking if what we've had to do programmatically has driven people away?
Correct. And if you factor in the larger number of people that will be in school,
I guess my first comment would be I don't know that there's any statistical way to measure that other than maybe surveying people, but I'm going to ask Mr. Seldenridge to kind of explain how he comes up with the numbers that he's come up with based on the enrollment projections that he shared. And I think when he answers it, I don't think it's going to factor in at all students who might leave by choice, by volition. Kim, you want to take a shot at that question?
Well, there was a noticeable drop in the birth to kindergarten retention ratios the past couple of years, which I think probably there was a direct correlation with the change in kindergarten program. So that has an impact on decisions, that has an impact on enrollment. But as far as how these programs affect charter schools and cyber schools, that hasn't been factored into it. Quite honestly, we don't know the impact of anything.
Okay, so other questions. As far as the fund balance, it seems to fluctuate every year. Are we now using software to do projections for multi-years and we'll be able to handle the fund balance and some of the other numbers? Or is it I know when we say that we're going to use 2 million, we use 1.5 million, and it seems to all over the board. Is that being looked at, or is there a reason why?
Well, a couple things. One is fund balance will fluctuate from year to year. One of the things everybody needs to understand is that the school district has close to 5,000 different accounts, and each one of those accounts can have a variance. And so, depending on what happens, the weather, cold weather can have an impact on the fund balance. One of the philosophical changes that have been made that Dr. Otto referred to was there were individual contingency accounts, and that allowed for a lot of variations. That's changing, and so what I would project for the future is that you're going to have a tighter rein on those variations, but there's still going to be some, because again, there are so many things that are beyond the control of the school board or the school district, such as the weather, that you're going to have fluctuations in the fund balance.
Mr. Miller, let me add to that. Having sat as a member of the public for so long, I would have the same question. We would have these dire predictions of all the fund balance being spent only to find a surplus instead. And I think listening to the presentations at the Finance Committee meetings, I think the administration does have a much better handle on how the money's being spent. I guess the only true test of that will be to see where we wind up at the end of the year.
One last question. As far as the impact on real estate values, on changes to the school system, has there been any analysis or studies to the impact that we're actually doing to the value of our homes?
I don't know of any.
As far as taxation, there's a lot of other factors that have the impact on the value of your homes. As long as your taxation stays within the range of your neighbors, the impact is de minimis. The fact that Daniel Boone is 7th in the county, I don't think has an impact on the value of your home. If you were way out of range, either the real high range or the real low range, yes, it may have some impact. But the fact that you're in the middle, I don't see having a large impact.
Well, it's just actually really referring to the view of schools that things are falling apart and people don't go in, come to the yard and all extracurricular activities to support whatever you do about it.
Yeah, that's without saying your school districts. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
He's got to fix that feedback. Man. There's no mics.
Very Township, Union Township. So, there's a lot of that. Richard, a little public service announcement. They're having a blood drive at the high school tomorrow. There were 4
there's an earnest plea for additional blood drive donors. Thank you, Mr. Templin.
Shane Cockrell, 830 Gagatown Road. My question is with Bill 1776 and our budget. If they go forward and go away with property taxes, will they consider funding all these programs that we have cut, or should we be fighting to keep funding these programs that we're cutting? So in case this bill goes through and they say, okay, we're going to now cover your budget. I'm not quite sure how 1776, I understand how it's going to work, but I don't know how it's supposed to take over our budget. So if we go ahead and start cutting all the programs and this bill goes through, will we be stuck with all these cut programs, or will they institute extra funding to bring back full-day kindergarten and the athletics and music and gym class and foreign language, or will these be lost forever?
Mr. Cock, I checked my watch because I wanted to see how much time I had to talk about the bill. House Bill, Senate Bill 76 is titled the Property Tax Independence Act, for those that aren't familiar. What it proposes to do is raise the sales tax from 6 to 7%, raise the state income tax from 3.07 to, I believe, 4.24, and eliminate most of the school property tax. I say most because it would not eliminate the debt service. So we would still be paying, I think the debt service as presented was like 13%. We would have 87% of our school taxes eliminated, school property taxes eliminated. The problem is, or the conundrum, if you will, is that the state would then fund our present funding. So if our budget is $52 million, they would fund $52 million plus a cost of living increase annually. They would not fund extra money to bring back anything that we cut. So we're sort of caught in the sense of, if we start adding programs that we haven't found a way to afford yet, and they don't pass the bill, then we're stuck with funding those programs. If we cut the programs and they do pass the bill, the programs are gone. So I don't know if that satisfies your question, but that's pretty much the answer.
So we'll actually, all these years we've been fighting to keep these programs. This year, we could actually, this board could vote to eliminate all this money, and next year, 1776 goes through, and now we are forever short from state funding, and our kids will be suffering till they graduate and the next generation is coming through.
That is potentially the result, yes. The only other answer I could give you is that the second part of that equation is that the whole funding formula for students in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is badly composed. You have school districts that get $16,000 per student. You've got school districts that get $8,000 per student. So that would be the second component of House Bill, Senate Bill 76, would be to change the funding formula to hopefully that every student would receive the same amount of money from the state. That, again, I can't tell you that either bill will ever pass or not pass.
Okay, but I would strongly recommend trying to save as many programs as possible. I understand the position the board's in, but it would be horrendous for our community to cut these programs. And then this bill goes through, things have changed, and now we
my answer to that for everyone is that we will do everything we can to not eliminate any program we possibly can keep. Now, how that's going to wind up 6 months from now, I don't know, but every committee we have will be looking at how can we fund all of our education process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Martino, may I speak to that?
Yes.
Isn't it true that the money would not come from the state earmarked for any particular program?
Right. What the state would do would be fund.
We could do whatever we wanted to do with that $52 million, right, as our community prioritizes?
Yes, but to address what Mr. Conkle's saying, we could bring back, say, a program that was cut, but then we'd have to look at what else to pair.
Right, but also looking down the road when the pension obligation levels out, we would be able to bring some of those programs back, and that's a substantial amount of money, I understand.
Right, and that's something everybody needs to understand. The state created this pension problem, and the state has yet to address the pension problem. So, as Mrs. Bites is saying, as that levels out, hopefully we'll have more latitude.
Yeah, no, with the amount of money that's short. Joe Corey, one of the videos we tried that I was first of all, I just want to thank Mr. Sullivan. It's great to have a resource to, kind of another set of eyes to look at this from a financial perspective. No disrespect to Mr. Boyer and the considered report. I really appreciate that. With that said, I'm wondering, as we project to use $2.1 million in this current budget year, or perhaps now $1.8 million, we're thinking we can fund balance. I still go back to things Brett said in previous iterations of this process that, I can't help but feel like we have a budgeting, there's something we're missing in the budgeting process that creates us to think that we're going to be so far off from needing to use so much fund balance, and then year after year generate a surplus and add to it. So my guess is we're not going to use the $1.8 million, and I'm only guessing that from previous year's experience. And I think that the board didn't think that we're going to use that much, and that's why, willing to say, let's go to $2.7 million out of the budget. So anyway, I would be, very, very pleased. Again, very, very good, Mr. Sullivan, as part of the process to, maybe unearth something that may be amiss in that process. A couple of things, and I have a hard time seeing the revenue numbers, but I'm trying to piece together how we're going from $52,849,000 current year budget to a new budget that is $412,000 less than that on the revenue side. Despite the fact that we're increasing taxes, which is $782,000, pensions are going $1.3 million, which is $650,000. So those two things alone should have added $1.3 million in revenue, and instead revenue's going down to $400,000. And so I realized when I saw the other numbers related to the saving, the change in the pensions, revenue based on the costs, et cetera, that math doesn't come together for me. And so I just asked, maybe go back and take another look through that so that we all can understand that perhaps in the future presentation. Additionally, those documents, I'm going to ask that they post on the website so that, maybe I'm not seeing something to talk about. The other thing is related to the teacher salaries. I love those graphs and comparisons and all that kind of stuff. Though I wonder, comparing the teacher salary of a 20-year master's degree teacher, is that really the right comparison to see how we stack the teacher salary-wise against all the other districts? I don't know how many 20-year master's degree teachers we have. That's really a good indicator, to be presented as a view of that particular scenario.
I think we can, if I may interrupt, Mr. Seldenbridge, can I think address that for you?
The only reason I chose that is that that's where most of one, or number two, as you look at other districts. So the whole salary matrix, if you look, compare it number for number with other districts, is probably the highest matrix in the county.
So what we're saying is the majority of our teachers fit into that 20-year service or 20 now.
Well, the biggest piece of them, too, not, if you take the other pieces and add them all together, compare them to the other district, it's still the highest matrix in the county. In other words, you have a matrix of, you have a matrix going across, steps going down, you take all those numbers, you look at them, you add them up, they're the highest.
See, the only reason I'm asking, this is important for me, is because I recall going through the list of all the teachers and all their salaries that was posted on the website. And it's not the majority that think 90,000 is what seems to be represented on that graph in terms of salary. So that's why I'm saying, well, wait a second, maybe that's not really the right, you know, you pick out any category to account for cost. I'm not saying that teachers are, you know, highly paid compared to their peers perhaps in the district. But I think this is a dialogue that we really need to play out over the next 5 to 6 months. And I think, you know, a realistic, maybe not is a realistic one, but I think a realistic presentation of what that does look like will be much more informative to the public than perhaps one that might not be represented.
Mr. Corey, I've allowed the time to expand because of the budget presentation, and I know these numbers impact everyone in the community. Let me just answer you by posing a rhetorical question to what you just said about teacher salaries. Does it really matter what the teachers in Exeter or Boyertown or Reading make? When we have the ability to raise taxes, if that's a necessity, by 1.15 mils, if I heard correctly.
That's correct.
And without, to go beyond that, we would have to have a referendum. So assuming that we raise those taxes and here's how much money we have, we can only afford to pay what we could afford. What they pay in Exeter or in Needham or Boyertown or Reading really is of no consequence, is it?
Well, the only way it is when negotiations begin, perhaps, in the next go-around, which will start at the end of this current year, perhaps in 1 year left. And so, you know, perhaps to that extent, they do become those kinds of statistics. In terms of, does it really matter what they make anywhere else? No. We still only have 52, whatever the number comes out to in terms of revenue, that's how much money we have to spend.
And that was my point. But thank you for your comments, seriously. Any other public comment?
Motion to adjourn.
Prior to adjourning, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, those of you that celebrate Christmas, and those that celebrate another holiday, enjoy that. Happy holidays. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.